name is Scott Traylor. I'm the CEO and Chief Kid of 360 Kid, a company that specializes in content and technology product development for children. We offer our development services to companies in the educational and publishing space, the broadcast space, and the electronic toy space. The topic of my presentation today is social networking and kids, some developer thoughts. And to get started, I'm a big fan of the Wii. I love the Wii. And what better way to start your presentation than by making my me? I like blue. The responsivity of this interface is really well worth noting. And of course I like to mingle. So I'm having my mingle setting on. Alrighty, so as I mentioned, I'm involved in a lot of development of children's products for other companies as a service. And I've been in the business for about 17 years. I've seen a lot of pretty interesting projects over the years, some great, some magic, some dust. And an interesting thing that has really amazed me over the last year, you may remember I spoke about social networking briefly in my presentation last year, with just a handful of companies that are involved in social networking, and I just put together a quick list off the top of my head of sites that I'm familiar with, knowing there are many more. But I'm just amazed what a difference a year makes and how many more players there are in this space. But more so about how many players there are now, how many more players there will be in the very near future. If you could get your laser pointers ready, I'm trying to take a read on how many people in the room, active thinkers we have. Now this is where you need to, there's a collective intelligence here. Select a number that represents you. If there's a space that's filled, move on to the next one. This is a bit of a challenge for a group, but let's see how high a number we can get with a laser pointer in each circle, starting from 1. So if you could, and build to the top. So those folks at the top, start building from the bottom. Wow, this is actually working. Fantastic. Okay, so it's looking like, okay, n equals maybe, I'm going to say 41, 42. If you top folks could move over to this row. Okay, great. All right. That's good. So that gives me an idea. You know, we have a number greater than 30. I think that's important. Okay, so of everyone here in the room, I'm just going to ask a few questions about some sites that you visited. How many of you here have ever checked out the social networking site Stardoll? Yes or no? Okay. So I'm seeing maybe on the yes side, there might be about, I don't know, maybe 10 people. If all of you who have said no, remove your laser pointers. All the people who have voted yes, in your mind, think of a number from 1 to 10 about what you think about the Stardoll website. 1 being, you think it's awful, 10 thinking, well, it's a pretty darn good site. And if this works out correctly, with that number you picked, starting at the bottom, working your way up, find the number that you thought of in your mind. And if there's somebody already filling that space, move on to a higher spot. What I was hoping here, no, from the bottom down, so you guys at the top there. I'm hoping if we had enough people who are familiar with Stardoll that we would create a bell curve that would show where the larger part of the collective thinking in the group would say, oh, well, you know, what their perceptions are about this particular website. Okay, so N is a little low there. We're going to move on to the next screen. How many here in the audience have checked out the social networking site Nicktropolis? Okay, again, it's a little, we got some low numbers, but looking about 10 again. And I'm going to move on. Before I do those, folks, in the no area, remove your laser pointers. Those in the yes, pick a number from 1 to 10, thinking about what your thoughts are about Nicktropolis. 1 being the worst, 10 being the best, and start building up this bell graph if we can. You guys move down a little bit if you can. Okay, so it's pretty spread out.
So Scott, you want 1 dot per row, is that right?
No. 1 dot per row. You want to go to the lowest position you can get to that number.
The lowest position. If somebody's there, you move up 1. Okay. Now this next slide, I think many more people will probably be familiar with, or at least that's my hope. How many folks here are familiar with Yville? Yville's been around a pretty long time. Okay, it looks like maybe 12 to 15 maybe in that area. If the no people can remove yourself from the screen and try building another bell graph from the bottom about what you think from a scale from 1 to 10, 1 being the worst, 10 being the best, what you think. And this is a nice sample there. It's skewing higher in terms of quality compared to the other ones. Okay, great. That's very helpful. It's interesting that there are a great many social networking websites for kids, and I use the term social networking loosely because I also use the thinking of that community-based websites, which can be a different flavor of social networking, fall under the category of social networking. As Peter Grunwald had mentioned to me in a call we shared a week or 2 ago, that social networking as a concept on the internet has been around a long, long time. It's just that people are applying it in different ways and different technologies for very specific audiences. And at the moment, social networking, I got to tell you, as a developer, since about June, I've had maybe, I don't know, a few handfuls of calls where people will say, you know what? I need your help as a company. We want to build a social networking website for kids. We've got to hurry. We've got to get to market. Let's go. And almost always the number one thing the conversation starts off with is, I want to make a site just like Club Penguin, but better. Right away. I can't tell you how many people have said that to me. That's priority number 1. The very next thing they often say is, well, I want to create a really great site for kids ages 6 to 12, so they'll be able to interact with each other in my super cool social networking environment. I also want customizable 3D avatars. And I want a large immersive site right from the start, like yesterday. How quickly can you build it? And that's only going to cost 5 figures, right? I kind of want to address each one of these points because I know some folks in the audience are very interested in social networking for kids, and we spend an awful lot of time in my office talking about what works, what doesn't work, what are some recommendations we would like to offer to the community at large that's thinking about a social networking product for kids. And so I want to address the first one, is make it better than Club Penguin. Well, what is it? I often ask people, what is it that you wish to offer that's different from Club Penguin? In fact, I think it's so much better if you don't use Club Penguin as the target and use something else as your goal. It's like, what unique thing that you want to create that could really attract kids and be compelling? Does it involve balloons? Does it involve piñatas? Does it involve frogs? What is it? Try to define yourself in a way that isn't in the domain of Club Penguin. Is often a recommendation I make to a lot of people right off the bat. What can you offer that is truly unique and will stand out from the rest of the industry? That is a little harder question to answer, but I'm going to provide a few recommendations in a moment for you. And is there a tangible extension to your social networking concept? And I'm a big fan of the Webkinz model with plush dolls, but at the same time, I'm seeing opportunities that others are missing, and while there's another product by Hasbro called NetJet, which is not specifically a social networking product, there's some brilliance in its thinking. That if you think about the web and kids and experiencing different websites, those that are subscription-based, when they go to a parent or a caregiver and say, hey, can you sign me up for, $5.99 or whatever it is a month, I'd really like to do this on the website, a parent will often think, well, why should I pay for this monthly subscription to some kid's content online? There's a ton of stuff for free online. And there's a perception that there isn't much value behind a subscription-based service if there's so much content that you don't have to pay for. Whereas the beauty of Webkinz and NetJet is there's a tangible item that somebody will be willing to pay for that will lead to an online monthly subscription revenue stream. I often look at Webkinz and say, is that a social networking website or is that a toy in disguise? What is it that you're paying for? At the checkout counter, it's the toy, but it's really the gateway to the social networking experience. NetJet at the same time, it's a little, if you're unfamiliar with it, it's a little game controller that's USB-based that plugs into your computer and unlocks different games on a portal that you can play. The controller is pretty much trivial. It's a piece of dumb plastic that you could use a mouse, you could use the keys on your keyboard, but there's something psychological that you're willing to spend money on in the physical device to then pay for the monthly subscription rates. And then also, I think everyone who's interested in racing in the social networking direction should be asking themselves, well, where are the holes in the social networking world? On this next slide here, I've provided what we think, this is the 360 Kid Matrix to holes in the social networking world. I've broken this up in a few different ways. You'll see along the top here, there are age groups. This is age 4, age 5 and 6, 6 and 8, 8 and 10, 11 and 12. Going across the top is gaming, but in terms of learning, we have different super categories, if you will. Art, math, reading, science, financial literacy, global citizenship, media literacy, and social consciousness. And at the very bottom here, I have dress up in fashion. So where you see little bullet points here are where the holes are starting to be filled in the social networking space. Over here, I've listed the companies that I think are the early entrants to those spaces that are worth watching. That's not to say they're doing the best job, they're just there first. Everywhere else that's blank is an opportunity, just waiting to happen. Some new ones that just came out were announced within the last 2 weeks. There's the My Noggin site from MTV Networks and Viacom, Nickelodeon, Panwapa from Sesame Workshop. I have these couple of areas here shaded because some people who request to develop some kind of social networking site forget the fact that there is kind of an age point where social networking starts to become an interest, but before that age, it's something that isn't really part of a child's interest. So moving on. Another big opportunity that my chart doesn't show is that there's a huge gap for thinking about products for boys. There are lots and lots of social networking experiences that speak very loud and clear to girls, but not specifically to boys. I think the strongest one that I could point to that does call to boys is RuneScape. At the same time, depending on how you think about RuneScape, I don't think that's, in my personal opinion, I don't recommend it for kids under 12, although I'm keenly aware that kids under 12 use it. That's a decision that a parent needs to make. My decision is different than other parents. But when I look at what's available for boys, I find that that tends to be the only one that really speaks loudly to them. So when addressing the next point, when somebody calls me and say, I want to build a social networking site, I go, kids 6 to 12. I say, well, okay, you got to make some decisions about what it is, target somewhere within 6 to 12, because anything from, 7 and under, there's a real egocentric approach, if you're familiar with Piaget's stages of cognitive development, that a child just isn't interested so much in what in a social opportunity to communicate online. And they may have issues related to reading and writing, but that's not necessarily a strong play pattern that 7 and under are gravitating towards. Whereas 8 and over, communicating, working interactively with a group is a stronger play pattern Before that, it's much more about parallel play, two people playing side by side but doing different things, but not playing together. I think that's important to consider when thinking about making a social networking website for kids and defining your target audience. Also, I get a lot of this, and I'm sure it's not just social networking, and those working in gaming, this comes up a lot too. It's like, well, the race to make things 3D. Why? Because you can. Because Microsoft Xbox and Sony's PlayStation 3 have really powerful 3D graphics rendering capabilities. And I argue that you should pick kind of how you want your characters to be represented based on the experience, based on the story, that you shouldn't immediately think 3D. 3D may be the right solution, but don't start there, just like when people call me up and they say, we want to build a project and we know it's got to be in Flash. And I was like, well, what makes you think it's got to be in Flash? I'm just curious. You know, to me, that tells me Adobe and Macromedia's marketing is working really well. That doesn't tell me that that's the right solution for developing your cool new software product. So, Stardoll, for those of you who are unfamiliar with it, what I find unique about it is a flat 2D approach. There are some production benefits for developing in that way. 2.5D or an orthographic view has, Club Penguin is kind of 2.5D. Habbo Hotel is a great example of 2.5D. And the best 3D example I could think of is RuneScape, though there are plenty of others, but I'm talking about in the social networking space. And I wanted to show, addressing kind of whether 3D, 2D, what should you do. I wanted to show the software product that came out long, long ago. Some of you may remember it, called Stuntcopter. I'm just going to play it here for a second. Okay. Did anybody feel a little pain when that guy fell? Right? So, oh my God, help him. What's interesting is, if a character that is just 12 pixels high can create such a strong emotional connection, then why the race to 3D? So I use that as an example to say you don't have to go with the slickest, most polished graphics approach, because you can get a lot of mileage out of just even 1 bit. Large and immersive right from the start. Some of the things that, the beauty about some social networking websites that I love, like Club Penguin and Yville, is that these are labors of love that have gone on for years, and don't buy into the media hype that this is an overnight success, because many of these people have been working on it for over 10 years, if not longer. And the great thing about building over time is that you can test out what works and throw away what doesn't. When I get the calls like, we need this huge, massive thing, and it's got to launch next week or next month or whenever in an impossible time frame, there's no room for testing to throw away what won't work. And that, I think, has largely been the success of some of these other social networking websites that have been around for a long time. They've had the opportunity to test things out and get it right. Okay, a few design tips for you. These are things that I've heard in the marketplace. These are not necessarily things that I adhere to, but I wanted to share them with you. The first one is this. I know a toy company that says, whenever we come up with a new idea, we always try to see if we can add a monkey. Works for that toy company. So, okay. Continuing on the monkey theme. I sure don't like pirates, but man, do they sell. I read this somewhere about, the glut of pirate movies that came out, and it's like, okay, pirates. Remember that. Monkeys. Pirates. And then at E3 a few years ago, I heard this. The more things that catch on fire or explode in our games, the more games we sell. And these were the tips that these companies had built into their projects. Now, mind you, I'm interested in learning products. I'm not involved in violence or anything. I turn projects away that even remotely smell of violence to me. But there are, but seriously, a few of the tips that I would like to share with you. First, don't design by committee. Have 1 to 3 really strong visionaries part of your team. I think the designing by committee results in a really weak product. That's my personal opinion. You don't have to agree with it. I know there's some larger toy companies here and things are run differently. But I find the design integrity of working with small teams is very strong. Be open-ended in your design. Don't force children to play in a very specific way if you can avoid it. I think it's much more designing in an open-ended way plays much better to a constructivist or a constructionist approach that will benefit the user and your product. Think emotional connection. How can you get a child to fall in love with your characters, if you should choose to have characters, and what is the emotional tie you can have with the content you're presenting? Design for a very specific audience and learn as much as you can about that audience. And I mean specific, like ages 3 to 7 or 7 to 9. This, like, when you see it on the sides of boxes, this is a great product for anyone from 3 to 300. Run. That's not the way to design a product, in my opinion. If you create a great product for 7 and 9-year-olds, you may have some creep on either end, age-wise. But you should target a very specific audience first. And then, competing against a community versus competing against yourself. A lot of people ask me about whether the idea of having leaderboards. And I'm always against having leaderboards in a community setting, but having a leaderboard against trying your personal best, I'm all for. And it's always about beating your best score, not the best score of your neighbor or somebody else around the globe. Text. Think about your audience. Can they read? Are they pre-readers? Are they struggling readers? And how does that play into your design? And if all else fails with these tips, then refer to the exploding monkey pirates that I talked about earlier. I'm going to just wrap up here. Thank you very much for your time. It's just funny that I'm seeing such a race for market share in the social networking world right now. I know many others feel it and see it as well. I've talked about this with Warren Buckleitner in conversations and conferences past. Are we headed for a social networking bubble burst? And I had said, you know, maybe by this coming May I see a burst on the horizon. Warren has even said, I think it's going to happen right now. Right? I think you remember we were having that conversation. Just recently I started to think, well, maybe it might not be a bubble burst, but maybe it's a definition of a new play pattern that speaks very well to kids online. It's just we haven't fully figured out how to make it successful for kids in a perfect way. There will be winners and there will be losers. There will probably be many more losers than winners. But to just know that there are as many social networking websites as we see out right now, there are going to be many, many more coming out soon. Thank you very much for your participation in my presentation. I just want to offer a few resources for you. One, I talk about social networking and a lot of things going on within the kids' world. On my blog, 360kid.com/blog. Also, I send out news blasts usually to those that are interested and those that I think that might benefit from some particular news item going on in the kids space. I send out anywhere from 3 to 5 news blasts a month, no more. I keep it very light. I try to keep it very pertinent to what's going on, movements within the kids industry that are worth watching. YouTube, I've got some video posted of Lisa Guernsey's presentation in New York a couple of weeks ago, as well as some other speakers related to the kids industry on YouTube. Just do a search for S-Trailer. And if you'd like to get in touch with me, you can reach me at scott@360kid.com. And if you have any really great projects that you'd love to build, I'd love to talk with you about how to really make a difference with kids using digital technology. Thank you very much for your time.